I stood in the doorway of what had been my craft room for 37 years, staring at the empty shelves where my grandmother's porcelain collection once sat, and I felt something inside me finally snap. Not in the dramatic, explosive way you see in movies, but in the quiet, definitive way that a rope breaks after bearing too much weight for too long. My daughter Claire's words from 3 days ago still echoed in my head, sharp and dismissive. "Mom, honestly, your things are just clutter. Nobody wants this stuff anymore. It's embarrassing when Marcus's parents visit." I'm Evelyn Harper. I'm 72 years old, and until that moment, I'd spent the last 4 decades of my life believing that sacrifice was the same thing as love. Let me back up. This story doesn't start 3 days ago when my daughter called my life's treasures clutter. It starts much earlier, in the small decisions I made over and over again, the ones that taught my children that my needs would always come last, that my space could always be invaded, that my life was something to be tolerated rather than respected. When my husband Robert died 8 years ago, I was 64. We'd spent 43 years together in the house on Maple Street, the one with the blue shutters and the garden I'd cultivated since our first spring there. Robert and I had bought it when Claire was just 2 years old and her brother Daniel was on the way. Every room held a memory. The kitchen where I'd taught both kids to bake Christmas cookies. The living room where we'd watch them open presents every year. The backyard where Robert had built a treehouse that both children had outgrown but that I could never bring myself to take down. After Robert passed, everyone told me I should sell the house. "It's too big for one person," they said. "The maintenance will be too much." But I wasn't ready. That house was the last place I'd heard Robert's laugh, seen his reading glasses on the bedside table, felt his presence. I had Robert's pension, my own retirement savings, and the part-time job I'd kept at the library. I was managing just fine. Claire had other ideas. 6 months after her father's funeral, she started the campaign. "Mom, you're rattling around in that big house all alone. Don't you think it's time to downsize? You could get a nice condo, something modern with no yard work." I smiled and changed the subject, but Claire wasn't the type to let things go. She never had been, not even as a child. When Claire wanted something, she pursued it with the determination of a general planning a military campaign. The suggestions became more frequent. Every phone call, every visit, she'd find a way to work it in. "The roof on this place must be ancient, Mom. Those stairs are going to be dangerous as you get older. Do you really need 4 bedrooms?" I held my ground, politely but firmly. This was my home. I wasn't ready to leave it. Then Claire discovered she was pregnant with her second child. Emma, their daughter, was 3 at the time, and suddenly Claire and Marcus needed more space. Their 2-bedroom townhouse wasn't cutting it anymore. "We're looking at houses, Mom," Claire told me over coffee one Saturday. "The market is insane right now. Everything decent is going for way over asking price. Marcus is stressed about the mortgage we'd have to take on." I congratulated them, offered to help them look, even suggested they borrow my real estate agent's number. I didn't see the trap being set. 2 weeks later, Claire showed up at my door with Emma in tow. "Mom, I've been thinking," she said. That particular brightness in her voice that I'd learned over the years meant she wanted something. "What if Marcus and I moved in here with you? Just temporarily while we save up for our own place. With the baby coming, it would actually be helpful to have you around to help with Emma." I should have said no immediately. I should have recognized that temporarily, in Claire's vocabulary, was elastic, capable of stretching indefinitely. But I was lonely. I missed the sound of children in the house. And the idea of being needed, of being helpful, of not rattling around alone in those rooms full of memories, it was appealing. "Temporarily," I agreed. They moved in 3 weeks later. The first changes were small. Claire needed the guest room set up as a nursery. That was reasonable, I thought. I'd been using it partly for storage, some of Robert's things I hadn't been ready to sort through. I moved everything into the attic, each box a small grief, but I told myself it was good to make space for new life, new memories. Then the second baby came, a boy they named Owen, and suddenly the house wasn't just occupied but overrun. Marcus converted my sewing room into a home office because he needed to work remotely sometimes. "You don't sew that much anymore, do you, Evelyn?" he asked, not unkindly, but with the assumption that my hobbies were negotiable. I moved my sewing machine to a corner of my bedroom, temporarily stretched from months to a year, then to 2 years. Every time I gently brought up their house hunting, Claire had a reason to delay. The market's too crazy right now, Mom. We're still building up the down payment. With 2 kids, we need to be really careful about what we can afford. I understood. I really did. Raising children is expensive. I remembered those years. But slowly, steadily, my house stopped being my house. Claire had opinions about everything. The living room furniture was dated and needed replacing. Don't worry, Mom, Marcus and I will pay for it. You can't have guests over with that old couch. The old couch was the one Robert and I had picked out together. Reupholstered twice because I loved the frame. It went to Goodwill. In its place came a sleek gray sectional that I found uncomfortable and too modern. My kitchen, where I'd cooked thousands of meals, became Claire's domain. She reorganized everything. Mom, your system makes no sense. Why are the mixing bowls up there? They should be near the stove. I came down one morning to find she'd thrown out half my cooking equipment. That stuff was ancient, Mom. I got you new non-stick pans. These are so much better. The new pans were lighter, cheaper. They weren't better. But I said nothing. My garden became Marcus's project. I've always wanted to try vegetable gardening, he announced one spring. He tore up my perennial beds, the ones I'd cultivated for decades, the roses Robert had planted for our 20th anniversary, and went raised beds for tomatoes and zucchini. This is way more practical, Evelyn. You'll love having fresh vegetables. I watched from the kitchen window as he uprooted my roses and felt something die inside me that had nothing to do with the flowers. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. Not even a guest, really. More like a piece of furniture that had been there so long everyone forgot it had feelings. Claire had rules now. The children needed quiet time in the afternoon, so I couldn't vacuum or watch TV in the living room between 1 and 3. Dinner was at 6 sharp, and if I was going to eat with them, I needed to be ready at 6, not 6:15. The upstairs bathroom, the one that had been mine and Robert's, was now the children's bathroom. It's just easier, Mom, since their rooms are up there. You can use the powder room downstairs. The powder room. The tiny half bath that had been for guests. My bedroom became my only refuge, and even that wasn't sacred. Claire would come in without knocking to put away laundry she'd insisted on doing for me, or to borrow a dresser to store Emma's out-of-season clothes because, you have so much more space than we do, Mom. I kept thinking they'd leave. That temporarily would end. But 3 years turned into 4, and the conversations about them finding their own place became less frequent, then stopped altogether. This was their home now. I was just the person who'd bought it 37 years ago. Then came the comments about my things. I'm a collector. Always have been. Not a hoarder, nothing like that. But someone who sees value and beauty in objects, who builds connections to things. My grandmother's porcelain, delicate painted pieces from the 1920s that she'd given me before she died. My books, hundreds of them, collected over a lifetime of reading. Robert's model ship collection, each one built by hand over months of careful work. My craft supplies, because I didn't just sew, I also quilted and knitted and did decoupage and painted watercolors. Each hobby had its materials, its tools, its space. Or it had. Until Claire decided it was clutter. It started with small comments. Mom, do you really need all those books? You could get a Kindle. These old dishes are just collecting dust. Why don't we donate them? Dad's ship models are kind of outdated, don't you think? They're not really anyone's style anymore. Not anyone's style. As if Robert's careful work, his patience, his pride in each completed model, was a matter of trend and taste rather than love and memory. I pushed back gently. These things mattered to me. They were my history, my family, my life before Claire and Marcus had taken over. I understand, Mom, Claire would say with strained patience, as if I were a child being difficult about bedtime. But we have 2 kids now. We need space for their things. Your stuff is everywhere. My stuff. In my house. The breaking point came last Monday. Claire's in-laws were coming to visit, some sort of early celebration for Marcus's birthday. I came home from my library shift to find Claire in my craft room, the door wide open, boxes stacked in the hallway. What are you doing? I asked, ice already forming in my chest. Oh, Mom, good you're home, Claire said brightly, as if she wasn't currently packing up my belongings. Marcus's parents are coming this weekend, and I need to set this room up as a guest room. I'm just boxing up some of your craft stuff. Don't worry, we'll put it in the basement. The basement. The damp, unfinished basement where things went to mildew and be forgotten. Claire, that's my craft room. My voice was quiet, controlled. Mom, be reasonable. You haven't done any serious crafting in months. You're at the library 3 days a week now. And we need a proper guest room. I can't have Marcus's parents sleeping on the couch. There's a guest room upstairs. The one you turned into Owen's nursery. We can't move Owen. He just got settled in that room. Come on, Mom. Don't be difficult. It's not like you're using this space efficiently anyway. Look at all this stuff. She waved her hand dismissively at my carefully organized supplies, my cutting table, my shelves of fabric sorted by color and type. Honestly, your things are just clutter. Nobody wants this stuff anymore. It's embarrassing when Marcus's parents visit. Clutter. Embarrassing. I felt the words like a slap. Not the hot sting of sudden pain, but the deep spreading ache of a wound you didn't know you'd received until the shock wore off. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. When had Claire become someone who could stand in her mother's home and call her mother's life embarrassing? When had I become so diminished in my own house that my belongings were cluttered to be hidden away? Get out of my craft room, I said quietly. Mom, don't be dramatic. Get out. Claire huffed, set down the box she'd been filling with my quilting supplies and stalked out. Fine. But we're going to need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable. I closed the door behind her and locked it, something I'd never done before in my own house. I sat down in my chair, the one position by the window where the light was best for detail work, and I looked around at my space. The space I'd carved out of this house to do the things I loved. The space that my daughter had just called clutter. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I had become clutter in my own home. Not just my things, but me. I was the inconvenient piece of outdated furniture that didn't match Claire's vision for her life. I sat there for a long time thinking, remembering, when had I become this person who apologized for taking up space? Who moved aside and made myself smaller so everyone else could expand? Who allowed my daughter to treat my home like her home, and me like an unwelcome tenant? The answer was uncomfortable. I'd always been this person. I'd raised Claire to believe that mothers were infinite, that we could be compressed into smaller and smaller spaces without complaint. I'd taught her that my needs were negotiable by always negotiating them. I'd shown her that my boundaries were flexible by always flexing them. I'd done this to myself, but I didn't have to keep doing it. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went down to the kitchen and made tea. Not in the new electric kettle Claire had bought, but in the old stovetop one that had been my mother's. I sat at the kitchen table, the one I'd served 10,000 meals on, and I thought about what I wanted. Not what Claire wanted. Not what was convenient for Marcus. Not what was best for the children. What I, Evelyn Harper, wanted for the rest of my life. I wanted my home back. I wanted my space back. I wanted to be a person again, not a convenience or an inconvenience depending on the day. And I realized, sitting there at 3 a.m. with my mother's tea kettle cooling on the table, that I couldn't have those things as long as Claire and Marcus lived in my house. Temporarily had become permanent. They were never going to leave. Why would they? They had a beautiful house in a good neighborhood, they paid no mortgage, they'd slowly taken over every space and made it theirs. They'd taken over my life and made it theirs too. I couldn't ask them to leave. I knew Claire. She'd cry, she'd explain all the reasons they needed to stay. She'd make me feel guilty for even suggesting it. Marcus would be calm and practical, pointing out that moving with 2 small children would be disruptive and expensive. Emma would look at me with her wide eyes and ask, "Don't you want us here, Grandma?" And I'd cave. I'd apologize. I'd go back to being furniture. No. If I wanted my life back, I had to take it back in a way that couldn't be negotiated or argued against. I had to sell the house. The thought should have been devastating. This house was my home, Robert's memory, the place where I'd raised my children and built my life. But as I sat there in the quiet dark, I realized something. It wasn't my home anymore. Claire had already taken that from me. All I had left were the walls and the memories, and memories don't require a specific address. What I needed was a fresh start. A place where I could arrange my own furniture, organize my own kitchen, plant my own garden. A place where I wasn't an inconvenient leftover from someone else's life. I went up to my bedroom, my actual bedroom that had once been a refuge and was now just the room where I slept, and I got my laptop. I started researching real estate agents, property values in my neighborhood, smaller homes, condos, maybe even apartments, places that would be mine and only mine. By morning I had a plan. At breakfast, Claire was still chilly from our confrontation the day before. She moved around the kitchen making Emma's lunch with tight, efficient movements that broadcast her displeasure. Marcus was oblivious, reading something on his phone while Owen banged his spoon on his high chair tray. The tableau of family life, with me as the awkward addition at the table's edge. I have some errands to run today, I said calmly, finishing my coffee. I'll be out most of the day. Fine, Claire said without looking at me. I went to my room, dressed carefully in the good slacks and blouse I kept for occasions that mattered, and drove to the real estate office I'd found online at 3 in the morning. The agent, a woman named Patricia Chun, probably in her mid-50s, had kind eyes and a firm handshake. I called before driving over, so she was expecting me. Mrs. Harper, she said warmly, showing me to her office. You mentioned wanting to sell your home? I do, I said. And I need it to happen relatively quickly. Quietly if possible for now. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. She'd probably seen all kinds of family situations in her career. All right. Let's talk about your property. I described the house, the neighborhood, the condition. Patricia pulled up comparable sales on her computer. You're in a very desirable area, she said. Good schools, established neighborhood. Based on recent sales, I think we could list your property in the range of... She quoted a figure that made my eyes widen. That much. Properties in your neighborhood are in high demand. With 4 bedrooms and a yard, you'd likely have multiple offers. She studied me carefully. Mrs. Harper, this is a significant decision. Do you have family living with you? My daughter, son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Do they know you're planning to sell? Not yet. Patricia nodded slowly. I see. You should know that if they're residing in the property, it could complicate the sale process. They may have certain rights as tenants. They're not paying rent. They've been staying with me, originally as a temporary arrangement. How long have they been there? 4 years. Patricia's expression became more serious. Mrs. Harper, I'm going to be frank with you. This situation sounds emotionally complex. Before we proceed, I need to make sure you're certain about this decision. Are you selling because you want to, or because you feel pushed out of your own home? The question was so direct, so perceptive that I felt tears prick my eyes. Both, I said honestly. I want to sell because I want my life back. But I wouldn't need to sell to get that if my daughter hadn't. If things were different. Have you considered simply asking them to leave? I have. It wouldn't work. This is the only way I can reclaim my independence without it turning into a long drawn-out battle that would damage our relationship beyond repair. Patricia was quiet for a moment, then nodded. All right. Here's what I suggest. Let me come by and do a walkthrough, assess what needs to be done to get the house market ready. We can list it whenever you're ready. But Mrs. Harper, you're going to have to tell them at some point. I know. I will. I just need to be sure first. We scheduled the walkthrough for the following week, when Claire would be at Emma's school for a field trip and Marcus would be at work. I'd take a vacation day from the library. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. I was making a decision about my own life, taking action, refusing to be compressed any further. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Over the next few days, I began quietly preparing. I went through my belongings room by room, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to sell. Not purging. Not treating my life as clutter, but curating. Making conscious choices about what mattered enough to carry forward. My grandmother's porcelain? Essential. Every piece. Robert's ship models? Yes. They'd have a place of honor in my new home, wherever that would be. Half my books. I could be realistic. I loved them, but I wouldn't reread most of them. I'd keep my favorites, donate the rest. I found a storage unit across town and began, bit by bit, moving my most precious things there. Not everything, not enough that Claire would notice, but enough that my treasures would be safe when the house went on the market. Claire thought I was out running errands, going to book club, visiting friends. She probably didn't think about what I did with my time at all. I'd become background noise in my own life. Patricia came the following Wednesday as scheduled. She walked through the house with a professional eye, making notes, taking measurements. "It's a beautiful home," she said. "Well maintained. The updates your daughter and son-in-law have made, the kitchen, the living room, those will actually help the sale value." The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire had been renovating my house to suit her taste, never realizing she was increasing its market appeal. "I think minimal staging will be needed," Patricia continued. "We'll want to depersonalize a bit, clear out some of the daily clutter, make the spaces feel open and neutral. But the bones are excellent. I'm confident we can list this at the higher end of the range I quoted you." "How long would the process take?" "From listing to closing. In this market, if we get the right offer, we could close in 30 to 45 days. Maybe 60 if there are complications. 2 months. In 2 months I could have my life back." "There is one thing," Patricia said carefully. "Your current residents. You'll need to give them notice. Legally, since they've been living there for years, even without a lease and without paying rent, they may be considered tenants. You should consult with a real estate attorney about the proper procedure for asking them to vacate." She gave me the name of an attorney she'd worked with before. I called him that afternoon. Attorney Michael Rosenberg was brisk and practical. He listened to my situation without judgment, then laid out the facts. In most states, even without a formal rental agreement, someone who's been residing in a property for an extended period has certain rights. However, because they're family members who were invited to stay and aren't paying rent, the situation is less clear-cut. You can ask them to leave, but you should do so in writing, with a reasonable time frame. What's reasonable? 30 to 60 days is standard. Given that they have 2 young children and will need to find suitable housing, I'd suggest 60. If they refuse to leave, you would need to begin formal eviction proceedings, which could take several additional months. Eviction. The word felt harsh, legal, cold. But it was better than continuing to live as a ghost in my own home. "There's another option," Michael continued. "You could simply inform them that you're selling the house. Once a sale closes, the new owners would take possession, and your family would need to vacate at that time. It puts them on notice without requiring formal eviction, assuming they'll act reasonably and find somewhere else to live. And if they don't act reasonably, then we're back to formal proceedings. But it's a less confrontational starting point." I thanked him and ended the call. That night I barely slept. I was standing on the edge of a decision that would change everything. Once I listed the house, there was no taking it back. Claire would be hurt, angry, maybe both. She'd accuse me of being selfish, of not caring about her family, of prioritizing my comfort over my grandchildren's stability. And maybe she'd be right. Maybe I was being selfish. But somewhere between midnight and dawn I made peace with it. I'd spent 4 years being unselfish, being accommodating, shrinking myself down. I'd earned the right to take up space again. In the morning I called Patricia. "List it," I said. "Let's move forward." The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Patricia brought in a stager who politely moved some of Claire's more personal touches into closets and storage. "We want buyers to envision themselves here," she explained. The children's toys were corralled into their rooms. The photos of Claire and Marcus came down from the walls, replaced with neutral art. My grandmother's porcelain was carefully packed and moved to storage, both to protect it and to depersonalize the space. Claire noticed the changes but misinterpreted them. "Are you finally clearing out some of your clutter, Mom?" she asked, something like approval in her voice. "It does make the house look more spacious." I just smiled. The listing went live on a Thursday morning. Patricia had prepared a beautiful presentation. Professional photos that made each room look spacious and inviting, a detailed description highlighting the neighborhood, the schools, the updates. I sat at the library during my shift, refreshing the listing page on my phone, watching the view count climb. By Friday afternoon, Patricia called. "We have 3 showing requests for this weekend. And 2 agents have already mentioned their clients are very interested. I think this is going to move fast, Evelyn." It did. That Saturday, while Claire and Marcus took the kids to the zoo, Patricia held an open house. I made myself scarce, sitting in a coffee shop across town, too nervous to be home. Patricia texted me updates. Great turnout. Multiple serious buyers. This is going to go quickly. By Sunday evening we had 5 offers. All of them at or above asking price. 2 were all cash offers. I sat in my bedroom, the one remaining space that still felt like mine, and looked at the offers Patricia had emailed over. Any one of them would give me the financial freedom to start over, to find a place that was mine alone, to reclaim my life. I recommend accepting the cash offer from the Johnsons, Patricia wrote. 30-day closing, no inspection contingencies. They're relocating for work and need to move quickly. It's clean and simple. I responded before I could overthink it. Accept the Johnsons' offer. Now came the hard part. I had to tell Claire. I waited until Monday evening after dinner, after the children were in bed. Marcus was in his office, my former sewing room, on a work call. Claire was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. Claire, I need to talk to you, I said. Can it wait, Mom? I need to get Emma's backpack ready for tomorrow. No, I said firmly. It can't wait. Something in my tone made her look up. She closed the dishwasher and wiped her hands on a towel. Okay, what's wrong? I've sold the house. The words hung in the air between us. Claire blinked, then laughed, a confused, uncertain sound. What? I've accepted an offer on the house. We close in 30 days. Mom, that's not funny. I'm not joking. I listed the house 2 weeks ago. I accepted an offer yesterday. You'll need to find somewhere else to live. Claire's face went through several expressions. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally something like horror. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You can't just sell the house. We live here. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve, Claire. You're an adult with a husband and children. You'll figure it out, just like millions of other families do. But Mom, we can't afford to buy right now. The market is insane. And we'd need time to save up a down payment, find the right place, get approved for a mortgage. You'll have 30 days. If you need more time, you can rent somewhere temporarily. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears, the kind she cried as a child when she didn't get what she wanted. How could you do this? How could you sell our home without even talking to us? It's not your home, Claire. It's my home. It's always been my home. You've been living here temporarily, remember? That was the arrangement 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Things change, Mom. We're family. You don't just kick out your family. You're right, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Things do change. Like how my craft room became your guest room. How my garden became Marcus's vegetable garden. How my kitchen became your kitchen. And my house became your house. And I became clutter to be hidden when visitors came. Claire flinched. I never said. You called my belongings clutter. You said my things were embarrassing. In my own home, Claire. You made me feel like an unwelcome guest in the house I've owned for 37 years. I didn't mean it like that. I was just, we needed the space and you weren't really using. Using what? My life? My home? My right to exist comfortably in my own space. My voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. You've been slowly erasing me from this house for 4 years. I'm taking it back by starting over somewhere you can't follow. Marcus appeared in the doorway, drawn by Claire's raised voice. What's going on? She sold the house. Claire practically shouted. She sold the house without telling us. We have to be out in 30 days. Marcus's face paled. Evelyn, is this true? Yes. But where are we supposed to go? I don't know, Marcus. Where were you planning to go 4 years ago when you moved in temporarily? That's different. We have kids now, responsibilities. And I had a home. A life. Things that mattered to me that you both systematically dismantled because you needed space. I looked at both of them. These people I'd welcomed into my home out of love and loneliness. I gave you 4 years. I gave you my house, my space, my life. I'm not giving you any more. Claire was crying in earnest now. Mom, please. We can fix this. We can make more room for your things. You can have your craft room back. Just don't do this. It's done, Claire. The papers are signed. We close in 30 days. Then where will you go? I've found a condo. 2 bedrooms, plenty of space for me. There's even a craft room. I didn't tell her it was in a senior living community 45 minutes away, close to my younger brother Daniel and his family, far enough that Claire couldn't just drop by unannounced. You planned this, Claire said accusingly. You've been planning this for weeks behind our backs. Yes, because if I'd told you, you would have talked me out of it. You would have made me feel guilty, selfish, cruel. You would have told me all the reasons I should keep sacrificing my comfort for your convenience. And I would have listened because that's what I've been doing my whole life, making myself smaller so you could be bigger. That's not fair, Marcus said quietly. No, I agreed. It's not fair. None of this is fair. But it's necessary. Claire looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the mother she knew, the one who'd always accommodated and adjusted and made do, was someone I'd finally stopped being. You really mean this, she said. I really mean this. Then I guess we'll start looking for a place tomorrow. Her voice was cold now, hurt hardening into anger. Come on, Marcus. We need to figure this out. They left the kitchen, and I heard them climb the stairs, heard their bedroom door close perhaps a bit harder than necessary. I stood alone in the kitchen, shaking slightly, feeling the weight of what I'd just done settle onto my shoulders. It felt like grief and liberation mixed together, inseparable. The next 30 days were difficult. Claire barely spoke to me. Marcus was civil but distant. They spent every evening on their laptop, searching for apartments, calling landlords, discussing logistics in low voices that stopped when I entered a room. Emma asked why everyone was sad. And I heard Claire tell her they were moving to a new house, an adventure. I tried not to let it hurt that I wasn't included in that adventure. I continued packing, continued moving my essential belongings to storage, continued preparing for the life I was building. My condo purchase was moving forward smoothly. It was in a beautiful community with a clubhouse, a pool, neighbors my own age who had their own hobbies and lives and didn't need me to be constantly available. Daniel, my brother, was thrilled I'd be nearby. It's about time you did something for yourself, Ev, he said when I told him. I love Claire, but that girl's been walking all over you for years. I let her, I admitted. Well, you're not letting her anymore. Good for you. Patricia handled all the sale details with professional efficiency. The buyers, the Johnsons, were a lovely couple in their 30s with a toddler and another baby on the way. When we met at the inspection, Mrs. Johnson was effusive about the house. It's perfect, she kept saying. The neighborhood, the yard, the space. We can't believe our luck. I smiled and tried not to think about how Claire might have felt the same way when she moved in, before temporarily became forever, before my home became her house and I became furniture. 2 weeks before closing, Claire and Marcus found a rental house. Not ideal, they said. Smaller than what they were used to, more expensive than they'd hoped, but available immediately and in a decent school district. They'd be out a week before closing, giving themselves time to settle before the new owners took possession. I'm happy for you, I told Claire when she informed me of the news. She didn't respond. The week they moved, I helped where I could. I watched the kids while they packed. I ordered pizza when everyone was too exhausted to cook. I tried to be supportive without being overbearing, present without being intrusive. It was a difficult balance and I'm not sure I managed it well. The day they moved out, I stood in the driveway and watched the moving truck pull away. Emma waved from Marcus's car window. Owen was probably asleep in his car seat. Claire didn't look back. I went inside to the house that was mine again, if only for a few more days, and I walked through the empty rooms. The living room where Robert and I had danced on New Year's Eve. The kitchen where I'd taught Claire to make pie crust. The bedrooms where I'd read bedtime stories and tended fevers and dreamed dreams for my children's futures. I said goodbye to all of it. Not with regret exactly, but with acknowledgement. This house had been my home for 37 years, but it was someone else's now. The Johnsons would make their own memories here, raise their children here, build their own life. And I would do the same in my new place. Closing day was simple, paperwork and signatures, checks and keys exchanged. Patricia handed me a check that represented 37 years of mortgage payments, property taxes, and sweat equity. I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. Congratulations, Evelyn, Patricia said warmly. I hope this is the beginning of something wonderful for you. It already is, I told her. I moved into my condo the next day. 2 bedrooms just like I told Claire. One for me, one that I immediately set up as a craft room. My grandmother's porcelain had a place of honor on built-in shelves. Robert's ship models lined the mantel. My sewing machine sat by the window where the light was perfect. I arranged everything exactly as I wanted it. No compromises. No one else's needs to accommodate. Just my things, my space, my life. Daniel and his wife Susan helped me unpack. "This place is great, Ev," Susan said, hanging curtains in the bedroom. "You're going to be so happy here." I thought she might be right. The first few weeks were an adjustment. The condo was smaller than the house, cozier. I had neighbors on the other side of the walls, but they were quiet neighbors, respectful of space and boundaries. The community organized activities, book club, water aerobics, card games, and I started attending some of them. I made friends. Real friends, people who wanted to spend time with me for me, not because I was useful or convenient. I started quilting again, seriously, the way I'd always meant to. I joined a quilting guild that met twice a month. I took a watercolor class at the community center. I volunteered at the library more hours because I enjoyed it, not because I needed to escape my own home. I was living again, not just existing. Claire didn't call for 6 weeks. When she finally did, her voice was stiff, formal. "Hi, Mom. I wanted to let you know we're settled in the new place. The kids are adjusting okay." "I'm glad to hear it," I said carefully. "It's not ideal. The house is smaller than we'd like, and the rent is more than we'd budgeted. But we're managing." "That's good, Claire." An awkward pause. Then, "Why did you do it, Mom? Really?" I thought about all the ways I could answer that question. The true answer, the kind answer, the answer that would smooth things over. In the end, I chose honesty. Because I needed to. Because I'd let myself become invisible in my own life, and I needed to take it back before I disappeared completely. "You weren't invisible to us. Wasn't I? When was the last time you asked what I wanted, Claire? Not what was convenient, not what made sense for your family, but what I actually wanted." Silence on the other end of the line. "I love you," I continued. "I love my grandchildren. But I can't be a person only in the spaces you don't need. I deserve my own life." "I know," Claire said finally, her voice small. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't realize. I should have realized." "Yes," I agreed gently. "You should have. But I should have said something sooner too. I taught you it was okay to treat me like that by accepting it for so long. Can we?" Claire paused, then started again. "Can we maybe start over? Not like before, but better." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. It's been 6 months now since I sold the house and moved into my condo. Claire and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully. She brings the kids to visit sometimes and we meet for lunch, and I'm teaching Emma to crochet. But it's different now. Better, I think. Claire asks before assuming. She respects boundaries. She sees me as a person, not just as Mom, the endless resource that can be compressed without complaint. Marcus apologized properly one afternoon when he and Claire came for dinner. "I never thought about it from you, and I'm happy for me, in my cozy condo with my grandmother's porcelain and Robert's ship models and all the space in the world for my things that Claire once called clutter. Because they're not clutter. They never were. They're my life, my history, my choices. And now they have a home where they're celebrated, not merely tolerated. Where I'm celebrated, not merely tolerated. On quiet evenings, I sit in my craft room with a cup of tea and work on whatever project has caught my interest. Currently a quilt made from some of Robert's old shirts, turning memory into something beautiful and useful. I look at my things around me, arranged exactly as I want them, and I feel something I hadn't felt in years. Content. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is mine. My space, my choices, my life to live as I see fit. My daughter said my things were clutter. I packed up and sold the house. And I've never been freer.